Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Life Money Balance Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Preston Cherry, CEO and founder of Concurrent Financial. You know what time it is. We chop it up about life, money, balance, where we let your life lead your money, not your money lead your life, where your life and money is working concurrently to help you create and achieve your life's design, and you are living aspirationally. Let's chop it up. Been hearing a lot lately about Gen X. Gen X is one of the audiences that we talk to most here at Concurrent Financial and on the Life Money Balance podcast. And there's a lot of conversation about the great wealth transfer that's happening between the boomers and going to the Xers and going down to the rest of the generations. And you know, Gen X is the most forgotten generation. That's what the X is for. No wonder we're latchkey kids, the ones that were left at home while the parents were at, working. And then our brothers and sisters were watching after one another. We were outside in the yards playing, and you found most of us when you just drove around the neighborhoods and you were looking for the most bikes in the yard, right? So there were a lot of characteristics that identified the Gen X generation. MTV, right? There was Yo MTV Raps. There was all the videos. There was so much things going on in the Gen X generation. We grew up with the introduction of CPUs. I mean, who remembered the black and green screens on the computers, right? So much. But you know what? We also have a lot in common with our finances. The Gen X is the sandwich generation, meaning we have young adult children behind us, and we also have in front of us elderly parents that we're caring for. Gen X also has high earnings right now. They're in their highest earning life. They also are in their highest vitality years. So they're wanting to live now. They're full of energy. They know themselves very well emotionally. Hopefully, we've been through a lot. So you're past your 20s, past your 30s. So Gen X is in that age of 42 to 57 range. So you're either really growing, you're in your growth accumulation stage as far as money is concerned, and you're really living and thriving, hopefully, in your lifetime, as far as income and assets and just life in general. And hopefully you're enjoying these periods and also having less challenges along the way. Life is ebb and flow, and not everything is rosy all the time. That said, hopefully in these parts of life, we've gained enough tools through our lifetime to handle some of the challenges that we may have in our lifetime a little bit better, because we've have a lot more, hopefully some more emotional tools and financial tools, so we can get back onto the thriving pathway if we're knocked to the left or to the right a little bit. So what I want to address today are some of the top 5 conversations in Gen X households, both particularly when we're dealing with life and money that are common. So let's go through them. Top 5 conversations that I hear often, and one of them is, let's start off with couples. Most folks are coupled in Gen X households, and when we're talking about coupled conversations, what goes on in couple conversations? Well, first of all, are you having them? And what are the frequencies of the conversations? What are they in trusted spaces? Meaning, are both parties heard from their perspectives when you're discussing life aspirations? When you're talking about money perspectives? Where do you want to go? What do you want to achieve? What are you doing now? Okay. We talk often at Concurrent and also on this platform, as far as Life Money Balance, about the 6A system, right? Acknowledge where you are, uh, acknowledge, admit where you are, acknowledge how you feel about it so you can take action, and then align, aspire, and then achieve. So this framework helps with that, couples conversation dialogue, far as trusted spaces, uh, creating perspective from both parties, and creating that audit framework for where you can listen to both parties, both past, present, and future. When you're talking about frequency, are you having them monthly, how weekly, right? And then what are you discussing? Okay, so with those couples conversations, you're able to set the table for those pathways of where you want to go down or travel together in a manner to where hopefully you get to avoid conflict and have more harmony. Okay. All right. So another conversation here, and I'm turning some pages here, is when can you have the conversation about more and enough? When I'm talking about thriving in your Gen X periods, and you're in your growth accumulation stage. Well, during that time, you are more than likely growing and wanting more, because questions are, do we have enough right now? Do we have enough for our lifestyle now? And do we have enough for retirement? When we retiring from our must do to retiring to what we want to do. All right. Because during our retirement from what we must do to retiring to, we're not retiring from production in life. We're just retiring from our must do. Right. So there's things that we want to do in life. Okay. But when we are saying, what is our enough, and when have we had enough of this shit? Right? So that's that discussion. And it's also okay to say that you want more. There's often a lot of discussion about uh, wanting more. That's okay, because you want more in order to satisfy your enough. All right. But then enough is enough. you know, it's uh, we're going to have to just roll with the this contentment. We have enough and we've had enough. So let's just roll with our enough. Okay. So having that discussion will bring a little bit more harmony, a little bit more ease into your permission to transition, is the benefit of your more and enough conversation. All right. All right. And that also helps with the direction of your money. There's no question about that. All right. What about another conversation? All right. This is a big one, because it talks about size. Is your primary residence location and size? Your primary residence location and size. So what's your main home right now? Now, I just mentioned that as far as the sandwich generation is concerned, you may have adult children, and you may have some children that boomerang. All right, meaning if they graduate high school, go off to college, they may boomerang back on you. Okay, and come on back while they're exploring the beginnings of their career. That could happen. Okay, uh, and also you so you may need to stay in your primary residence if that's a larger home for a little while longer. But what about, and that's where those talks come about too, when you're talking about the frequency. Remember that number one, when you're talking to your spouse, more frequent, how do you handle those conversations? How do you handle those situations? Okay, but let's get back to the primary residence is concerned. How long do you want to stay in that primary residence? And when you decide to transition to that next life stage, all right, how much house do you want? How much house do you want? What, as far as size is concerned, where do you want to go? As far as that next transition to your next life stage, do you want to stay in state? Do you want to be more, or city life? Do you want more rural life? Do you want to live outside of the country? All right, that could be a journey, right? So because there's many folks, if you're living in America, you're going outside of the states, and if you're living across scope, coming to wherever it may be in the world, right? So, what is the location of your residence? What size of residence? So, what is your residence, far as your homestead, your primary residence lifestyle? Okay, is it apartment living, condo living? So that's a discussion. Some people want to live in a more minimalistic, so to speak, thinning things out, right? So, what as far as visitors concerned, guests and whatnot, there's a lot that goes into that. Uh, far as where you want to live, okay. So have that discussion too. It's a big part of it, and also it comes up into your tax conversation too about rolling over the equity that you have in your home. Do you want to roll that equity over into another home, or do you want to rent out your first residence and purchase another one? A lot of things to consider there. Okay. All right. So, what about our next conversation, which is how about your, let's just come back to that boomeranging thing, which is your supporting adult children. Okay. Well, adult children are delaying adulting a little longer than what Generation X did. Now, I know for my experience and my sister's experience, we got on about the house about 18, right? And I don't know, it's just, be sure to share some of your stories. I'd like to hear from you. But Generation X, was when we went to school, that was it. So, most of us, right? We got our apartments in 18, 19, 20, and we stayed on out. But that said, some of us boomeranged back to our parents, but that was also short lived. Nowadays, it's a little different, to where young adults are staying at home a little longer. Even with health insurance laws are a little different, right? Young adults are staying on their parents' health insurance all the way to 26 because the laws has changed, right? So same difference with the how young adults are staying in their parents' homes a little longer. Okay, so early 20s, even mid 20s, maybe even boomeranging and staying to the 30s potentially. So the conversation about how parents are going to provide support for young adult children, not only for living conditions, as far as housing, maybe car support, insurance, health, auto, uh, also how you're going to support maybe that first round of money, maybe on a down payment on a home. Uh, all of these considerations, school, okay, college support. That goes back to those conversations, those spousal conversations, those couple conversations. Two different perspectives here. One spouse may have a perspective of taking a little bit more school loan, or another spouse may say, we want to provide all the way through. Okay, so when we're talking about supporting young adult children, all right, at what scale, at what level? Okay, and why is this important? Because we go back to that old cliche, putting on your uh, air mask on first. For those that we know, we all fly, right? Because if we are supporting our young adult children too much sometimes, all right, we could run the risk of funding them too much, while putting the parent lifestyle, current lifestyle, and also retirement funding at risk, potentially. Okay. But that all goes back to what values and that you set forth in your the values and priorities that you set forth that are important to you. They're all unique to each household. So if you have those in a particular order, then and alignment, then it gives your money assignment and order and direction. Okay. But just something to think about when you're having these conversations, particularly about young adult children. How far do you go, or how do you want to go, particularly when it comes to funding your own plan currently and in the future? Okay. All right. This is a big one coming up. All right. This is one that touches home to a lot of folks. All right. How about long term care, not only for you and your spouse, but your parents? Okay. How how you want to be cared for? Let's touch on you and your spouse. How do you want to be cared for at the end of life? These are large expenses, long-term care, support, and services. They are they are large expenses because they're so hard to predict. These are some of the largest expenses for everyone. Okay, it's a high probability that most of us will need these cares at the end of our life, some sort of care and support. We don't know which, but some sort of care and support. Uh, that said, we don't know from whom or for what. So it's hard to. It's easy to predict that we'll need some support or service, but we just don't know what and for how long. Generally, it's around the last few years of our lifetime. All right. For the minor support and care, it could be for a elongated period of time, but for the major support and care, it's usually for the last 2 or 3 years. All right. It could be a major stress on the livelihood of our loved ones when there's no discussion. Particularly, we're still talking about spouses here. Okay. Um, so we need to be mindful and have these discussions on how we want to be cared for, how the funding, how the living arrangements, who's going to provide the care, not just our spouses, but we're talking about the services, the external services that we need to purchase in order to relieve some of that burden from our spouses. Okay, so we need to fund that pretty early, and particularly now when we're talking about Gen Xers in particular, to start allocating that maybe through insurances, long-term care, but also you can self-fund through you know accounting for that in your long-term savings, your long-term investments, by saying, okay, this is how much this may cost, so we're going to account for that and fund that in our long-term savings plans, saving and investment plans. Okay. All right. So start having those conversations. Now, what about parents? Oh, this is a big one. Now, sometimes parents may not want to have these conversations. And how do you bring them up? So some of the older generations are a little bit more private in their matters. So this may not be a easy conversation to broach. That said, and it may not be quick either. So one suggestion may be to take this in bite sizes. So bringing the topic up early is better, so it can be more palatable a little bit over time, and that way the conversation can advance a little bit more, and then you could make a little bit more movement over time. Okay, because this is a very personable and warm topic. All right. how do your parents want to be cared for when they advance to the late stages of their life? It's about dignity and love. Okay. That said, you hear a lot of stories about how much, again, potential burden this may, as far as long-term care support and services, may place on families when there's lack of funding, lack of understanding of how people want to be cared for in their later stages of life, and how their finances want to be dispersed and taken care of, how their legacy wants to be transferred. Okay, so it's very essential that you have these long-term care support and services and legacy conversations with your elderly parents. Also, too, it may be uh, essential to have a conversation with your spouse. Goes back to those spousal conversations as number one. Maybe in maybe partnered up with the residence conversation, because you may have to consider moving closer to either spouse's parents, far as taking consideration of care, far as proximity is concerned. Right? You may not be caring for them for 24/7. However, there may be some emotional support that you may be given to the parents, the elderly parents, if the funding is there. Right? If the funding is there, it's easier on everyone's emotions, even if you're living in close proximity. Okay, so try having those conversations with your elderly parents a little early, and give them time to open up about their wishes. Okay, so top 5 conversations for Gen X as far as life and money. Couples conversations, more and enough. Primary residence location and size. Adult children support. Long-term care, parents, and yourself. That's how we chop it up here about life, money, balance here. All right. Listen, we love having you listen to the show. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe those buttons. We appreciate you. And until next time, we'll see you next time. Cheers.